Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, fast am I, and welcome to the first update of 2025. Happy New Year. Welcome to the programme, your daily roundup of what's been happening on the Isle of Man today. And actually, also today, we're going to make some news predictions for the year ahead. Stay tuned for that. Also tonight, Manx Care and St Christopher's tell us they're fully committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of children on the island. And we hear from some rather unusual spectators at the Ravens game at the weekend. All that, plus we'll take a look at the weather and the traffic and travel as well. And if you spot anything when you're out and about and you can let us know, that would be great. 166 177 is the text number, or you can email us, studio@manxradio.com. Let's kick off as usual with a roundup of today's main news headlines with Lewis. Fast am I.
The mountain road is staying closed until at least midday tomorrow as a yellow weather warning is in force for wintry showers and ice. It came into effect at 12 p.m. and will be in place until noon tomorrow. Snow and hail is expected on higher ground above 500 feet. Elsewhere, there have been delays and cancellations at Ronaldsway as poor weather affects airports in the UK. Passengers are urged to stay up to date via the airport website or their airline. A Douglas resident is hoping politicians will support her petition to restrict roadside parking in part of the town centre to existing residents when it's debated in Tynwald this month. Andrea Kruger gathered 500 signatures of support after plans to redevelop the former nurses' home on Westmoreland Road into flats were announced last year.
Friends have already noticed that I'm not coming out in the evening simply because the chance of getting parked anywhere near my house is very unlikely.
And the island's former Judge of Appeal, Geoffrey Tattersall, KC, has died at the age of 77. He served in the role for 2 decades, from 1997 to 2017. In the latest international news, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced he's resigning. The leader of the Liberal Party has faced growing calls to stand down after poor opinion polls and high-profile resignations. Speaking outside his residence in Ottawa, he says his position's become untenable.
This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Mr. Trudeau will stay on until his party selects a new leader. A major incident's been declared in Leicestershire and Rutland where there's been heavy flooding. Cars are submerged and people are having to be rescued from their homes. A new look is reportedly set to speed up closures of its stores because of increased costs announced in the UK budget. Some had been earmarked to close anyway, but it's reported a quarter of the fashion chain's 364 shops are at risk when their leases expire. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with the news at 6 o'clock.
Thanks very much indeed, Lewis. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing, and there is that wintry showers and ice yellow weather warning in place. That's until midday tomorrow. Mainly over the higher ground, but it could be on some of the lower ground as well, especially during the evening. But the road temperatures lower down will mainly stay above zero, but except where any accumulations of snow occur. So this evening and tonight are going to see wintry showers. They might be heavy and widespread at times at first. They will become more isolated later. As we say, that will be seeing more snow on the hills, low-lying coastal locations, only likely to see slight accumulations. Temperatures falling to 2 degrees in most places overnight, but it will be freezing in the hills. So do be aware of those icy patches forming on untreated surfaces. They will remain damp from all the rain that we had earlier today. The fresh to strong west or northwest wind will swing to the north. It'll ease for a time overnight. And tomorrow, that risk of wintry showers will continue, mainly in the north of the island at first, just a small risk in central and southern areas later. And the temperature tomorrow will be around 5, but will feel much colder because of the wind. Sunset this evening was at 4:15. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 8:36.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 50 £21.49.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
SMS Trading. New and second-hand furniture from flat pack to fully built. See our range at 3 St Paul Square, Ramsey. All-island delivery and man-in-a-van service available. Call SMS Trading on 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio. It's just gone 5.5 minutes past 5. And Happy New Year, as I mentioned at the top of the show. And you might have heard our news review of 2024 on Manx Radio over Christmas. Siobhan from the newsroom gave us a roundup of all the biggest events of last year, set to a soundtrack of hits from across the last 12 months. But then what can we expect to see making the headlines this year? Well, Siobhan has been taking a look forward as well.
Well, a lot happened last year, didn't it? I'm not going to get into it though. If you want to reminisce, the news review of 2024 is available now wherever you get your podcasts. Do go and give it a listen, will you? It took ages to edit. Anyway, this morning we're looking to the future. As always, we don't claim to have magic powers here at Manx Radio, but there are a number of things coming up this year we're expecting to make the headlines. So let's take a little look, shall we?
Doctors on the Isle of Man have voted overwhelmingly in favour of industrial action, with 95% supporting it in a British Medical Association ballot.
The body that helps set the island's minimum wage is seeking feedback on plans to transition the rate to the living wage next April.
The Isle of Man Post Office is introducing a new pricing model. From the 13th of January, it'll cost 90p to send a local-to-local letter and £1 to send a letter to the UK. It currently costs 85p.
Manx Utilities says it's taken the next step towards developing a new wastewater treatment works for Garth. The company has now formalised all of the private land agreements required for the intermediate pumping stations.
The utilities regulator has started a consultation on current gas prices. Under the Gas Regulation Act 1995, Cura is responsible for setting rates for regulated customers and special agreement customers too. Whether the steam packet should be run as a government statutory board instead of an arm's-length company, and the need for a new sea services agreement are among the findings of a committee looking at how the ferry operator is run. Sean Cowper reports.
The committee is also asking Tynwald to consider the practicalities of transitioning the steam packet to a statutory board, or for Treasury to consider how to enhance its oversight of the company, reporting back by the end of 2025.
The last couple of years have been dominated by new boats and terminals, promenades and roundels. But what about the other projects promised for several years? Back in 2023, there was extended talk of a certain southerner returning home this year.
The Enterprise Minister says seeing the return of the Peggy to Castletown is not a priority for him. It's as Manx National Heritage says it remains committed to seeing the 18th century schooner back in Castletown by the September 2025.
Construction is set to begin on one of two hotly contested sites in Douglas.
Travelodge has agreed a 30-year lease with the developers of the Villiers Square site in Douglas. It'll be the company's first hotel on the island.
And will ground actually be broken this year on the elusive new Castle Rushen High School?
The Treasury Minister's also committed £3.2 million to accelerate the design stages for a new Castle Rushen High School. The plans include a swimming pool after controversial plans to stop funding the southern facility were pulled ahead of the budget.
Elsewhere, there are changes afoot in the world of entertainment. Fancy a Prosecco with your musical? Well, you'll be able to toast the Gaiety's 125th birthday with a drink at your seat from February.
Theatregoers will be able to consume alcohol in their seats at the Gaiety Theatre from next year, despite the majority of people not being in favour of the move. The Department of Education, Sport and Culture ran a survey in September seeking feedback on the proposed licensing changes.
If art's more your bag, the world's largest exhibition of works by Archibald Knox is set to go on display right here on the Isle of Man, opening at Easter. Or are you a sports fan? Well, there's a whole host of things to look forward to this year. The usual suspects will be back with the TT, the Parish Walk, Southern 100 and Manx Grand Prix all lined up in our calendars this summer. Making a return this year, though, is the Classic TT, which will take place alongside the MGP as part of an expanded 12-day schedule.
The chair of the Manx Motorcycle Club, which organises the MGP, says it's hoped the return of the Classic TT will attract more people to the Isle of Man and assist the hospitality sector.
The Gran Fondo Isle of Man will take place for the last time next year. Organisers of the international cycling event say its 10th anniversary will be its last. Rob Pritchard reports.
Whilst the exact reasons for dropping the event are not entirely clear at this time, officials say there are mixed emotions over the decision and that the organising team is already working on possible future events.
Speaking of cycling, there'll be a change of pace for one Sir Mark Cavendish, who's hanging up his bike for running shoes. We'll be able to cheer him on in France again, as he's hoping to run the Paris Marathon this year after retiring from professional cycling. Do you just love going to vote? Well, then 2025 is the year for you. The next local authority general election will take place on the 24th of April. Meanwhile, nationally, we'll see some changes in the Legislative Council, which has its own election on the 4th of March. They're just some of our best guesses at what's going to be making the headlines this year. As always, we'll keep you up to date right here at Manx Radio. And at the end of the year, we'll round up all the biggest events for you again.
Siobhan with those predictions there, and there's a full article on that at manxradio.com as well, and we can see how well we did at the end of the year, as Siobhan said. 11 and a half minutes past 5. Let's turn to some news that's happened this afternoon now, and Manx Care and St Christopher's say they are fully committed to ensuring the safety and well-being of children in care on the Isle of Man. Now, this follows social media commentary before Christmas, which the organisations have branded highly inaccurate and inflammatory. I'm joined now by Tessa Hawley, the news editor in the studio. And Tessa, we have, I should say at this point, been waiting for a response on this for some time now. What can you tell us about this?
That's right. So in early December last year, an anonymous poster took to the Facebook group Families in Man, alleging that St Christopher's staff had raised concerns about a number of critical issues that they were facing. And just as a reminder, the St Christopher's Fellowship is contracted by the Isle of Man government to provide services, which includes the running of care homes and the secure care home facility.
So what had this original anonymous, as you say, poster flagged as the main issues?
So they claimed that there was a severe staffing shortage, saying 40% of the St Christopher's workforce was agency staff. Now, they alleged that they were being brought in from the UK on a week-on, week-off basis. They said that highlighted major questions about consistency and care for vulnerable children, and claimed that this alleged staffing crisis should have been reported to government's Registration and Inspections Unit. The poster also claimed St Christopher's is running at a financial loss and was undertaking drastic cost-cutting measures, including keeping food bills to a minimum.
Now, these claims were made on Facebook. We know a number of MHKs were tagged in that post and the subsequent comments it then generated. So why are we only getting a response now, Tessa?
Good question. So naturally, with anything like this, it's our job as journalists to attempt to verify claims made like these. Obviously, the initial poster was anonymous, so we went directly to Manx Care and St Christopher's, and we were assured of a full response before Christmas. That didn't materialise, and it's only now, today, after we've continued to chase, that we've had a reply.
So what are St Christopher's and Manx Care saying then?
So both have discounted much of what was said, saying the figures quoted on social media in relation to staffing are highly inaccurate and there are not severe staffing shortages. They add that they proactively employ from within the local community and only supplement with regular and trained agency staff where necessary. Now, there are currently 9.5 full-time equivalent vacancies across St Christopher's 9 homes, and in relation to the staffing of the secure unit, they say St Christopher's has commissioned a consistent group of staff that work in that facility on a regular basis at a time which has been described as showing volatile demand.
What about the claims, though, of cost cutting?
Well, Manx Care says it's seen the food bills for St Christopher's and is confidently assured that there is appropriate, good, nutritious food being provided for individuals. But it adds, like any organisation in the current climate, it is prudent with spending in other areas, adding any cost-cutting strategy is focused mainly on central services and agency expenditure.
And just finally, what about the claims that St Christophers did not report staffing issues and isn't publishing inspection reports.
So Manx Care says staffing issues are reported where necessary in line with contractual obligations and commitments. And it adds that the latest report for the secure unit showed no concerns or any issues with recruitment or staffing for other smaller homes, which they say are proactively discussed and actioned accordingly. Manx Care adds that inspection reports are not currently made public in line with the Regulation of Care Act, but are provided to the health body and shared at quarterly partnership meetings.
Tessa, thank you very much. And as ever, you can find out more about that story at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, as we heard Lewis say in the headlines, the mountain road is closed until tomorrow at midday. That's because of the weather. Thank you very much to the texter who says the traffic lights at Minorca Crossroads in Laxey are causing backup of traffic. Around 80 to 90 vehicles, they say, from the Douglas direction, almost back to the MER crossing. So if you are going that way, just prepare to take a little bit extra time. Elsewhere down at the airport, we know there have been some delays with airports across the way because of the weather. So the London City flight earlier this afternoon was cancelled. Everything else looking pretty okay though. And with the steam packet, the Manxman is due back into Douglas at 6, heading out to Heysham again at 8.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with Quayside.
Now, we've heard on Manx Radio today about parking issues in the centre of Douglas, and one resident is hoping something can finally be done about it. And in this month's Tynwald sitting, politicians will be deciding whether or not to change the rules to roadside parking in the area. This is around the old nurses' home development on Westmoreland Road. It was a subject that certainly sparked reaction on today's Man in Line. Howard and Stephen were among those who shared their thoughts with us.
If she wants parking just for the residents around there, they're going to have to change legislation, because as far as I'm aware, and I can be corrected on this, that would then have to be private parking on public roads. And the only way you do that, in a sense, is if you have a reserved spot, and that's generally somebody that has disabilities or otherwise. These people who are wanting private parking and it's outside of their housing area, will they be charged rates on it as it then becomes part of their house? And will they have to maintain the roadway? There's a myriad of questions to ask, because that is a public highway paid for by the taxpayers. If they want private parking outside the house, then they should have to pay.
When this development site was first proposed in the strategic plan, there was 37 odd dwellings within it, and that would have been perfectly acceptable. What's happened now is MDC have come along in the guise of government, and they have produced an over-intensive plan for the site. They are asking not to be complied with for the number of parking spaces that would be required in a new development. And I think this is the nub of the matter. In a new development, you should comply with the strategic plan and provide the number of car parking spaces within it, like any other developer would have to. There's a number of issues that also we can draw extra out of this, and that is the area will still have a commercial area on the south side of this development, and in all the other parts of the area outside it, where people should be perfectly entitled to come along and park to go about their normal business and support these businesses. If a plan of this type was introduced, it would have a negative effect on them as well.
That's Stephen, and before that, Howard speaking on Man in Line about parking issues around the centre of Douglas earlier today. Man in Line, always here from midday every weekday. If you'd like to get in touch about anything, 66 13 68 is the number to call. Now, declining footfall year on year has prompted yet another Manx business to close its high street door. This comes as the Department for Enterprise seeks Tynwald approval for a multi-million-pound plan to boost footfall and revitalise the local economy. Yasmin's Baby Boutique on Senna Road in Douglas is moving entirely online. Owner Jay Thomas told us running a physical store seems unsustainable.
So I opened Yasmin's about 3 years ago. I just wanted to bring, unique clothing and accessories to the Isle of Man because nobody else was doing it. Obviously, retail is difficult anyway at the moment, but I was very lucky to have a lot of support from the Manx public in all this time, so I'm very grateful for that. But times are just getting more and more difficult for anybody in retail now, and each year less and less people are coming down to the street, and therefore less people are coming into my shop. So I have a specific number of customers who they do visit me a lot, and they're great, but that doesn't obviously sustain a business. So I made the transition to include a lot of my products online, especially the bigger products like prams and things like that, online only. And I noticed a lot of people were using the online store. So I made the decision to transition all of that online and turn the shop into the photography studio instead, because I started doing photography last year originally just to get people down into the store, and it just took on a life on its own. So I'm still getting to see all the mums and dads and the newborns when I do the newborn photo shoots, and I do the cake smash photo shoots. So I get to have the children and stuff in, because that would be the bit I miss. I know that a lot of people like to just come down to the store to say hi and chat, which is sad that they won't have that now, but at least I'll still get to see and chat to people and watch the babies grow when they come in for their photo shoots.
Jade Thomas talking about the physical closure of Yasmin's Baby Boutique. 21 minutes past 5. Well, as we know, Sunday's snowy weather has left the Manx Hills white and the mountain road closed until midday tomorrow. But as John Moss reports, it's also left one Met man fuming as people claimed predicted snow in parts of the island hadn't arrived.
That elicited a swift retort from weatherman Neil.
I've been getting so many phone calls saying, it didn't snow in Douglas. No, well, the warning said 400 foot. So people need to actually learn to read. I'm sorry, we don't live in the social media age. Learn to read a full forecast.
It'd be hard to enthuse about the Manx weather in the last 12 months. We had a week of summer temperatures at the end of July. We had a high of over 26 degrees on September the 5th. November was the driest on record. That apart, 2024 was wet, above average wet, cool, windy, some substantial blows through autumn and into winter. But of course it was a warm year, not quite but close to a record breaker. We had the fourth wettest spring on record, although it was very mild, mild and wet, lovely. Summer was disappointing. It got drier in June, but it also got cooler. A few more togs on the duvet. We had to wait until the last week of July for some proper summer. Then it was back to wet and windy. We even had an ex-tropical storm with gale-force winds. The MGP suffered. They had to try and squeeze 6 races in before lunch. We had to wait until September for the warmest day. October was calm and dry, but Storm Bertie brought flooding on as November closed. Your memory may well have been of a gloomy year, but the hours of sunshine were not far off average. January and September helping the cause there. The peak of the weather was perhaps Storm Dara, with gusts of 70 and a duration of over 20 hours. Over the year there were 18 days with gales, and that included 2 gales unusually in August. We did have a record in the year, the wettest recorded April day. Yes, indeed. Drip, drip.
John Moss dripping there. You're listening to Update, 23.5 minutes past 5. Now, when you're out and about during TT, you can expect to hear a multitude of accents and meet visitors from all over the globe. But on a cold weekend, when temperatures are close to freezing, in January, at a football game in Douglas, it might sound unusual, but that is exactly the experience our very own Chris Pearson had while watching FC Isle of Man at the Bowl on Saturday.
My name is Tom, from Germany, from Hanover.
And you're a fan of Hanover 96, one of the German sides, but you're here at the Bowl tonight watching the Ravens. Are you just on a bit of a tour around?
Yeah, we have a vacation here, and we like all to visit the countries all over the world. And for now it's Isle of Man, yes.
When did you come over to the island?
Yesterday evening.
And it was specifically to come and watch the game today? Was that the idea?
Absolutely, but for 3-4 hours we were in the team is Onken.
Onken. So you're watching Onken.
Yes, Onken, yeah,
Okay.
genau.
And what was the final score there?
The final score was 2-7.
2-7, okay.
For the against team.
Against Donkin.
Yeah.
So you're watching the match tonight, 1-0 down at half-time for the Ravens. What do you think of the ground? What do you make of the Isle of Man?
Oh, we like so much the Isle of Man, and the ground here. It's fantastic. It's a great ground, and we are so happy to be here.
And how many of you have come over from Germany for the match?
We are six persons.
Six. And Hanover 96, how are they doing this season?
Oh yeah, it's a good season for us. We play on the top of the second Bundesliga.
Second Bundesliga.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's absolutely okay. Maybe we can promote it to the first Bundesliga. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, enjoy the rest of your time here on the island.
Thank you so much, Chris.
What's your name, first of all?
Dennis.
Dennis, and you're a Bayern Munich fan, I understand.
Yes, for all my life, yeah.
Bayern, one of the biggest clubs in the world, there's no doubt about that. Slightly different to the FC Isle of Man team. What's it like to come and visit the ground here?
Because for some football fans, so the Isle of Man is something like own country. So we come here to watch some games and watch the island for one time.
Had you heard about FC Isle of Man in Germany?
Yeah, we have some friends who visited the island 1 year ago, and then we just noticed about it.
So there's 6 of you travelling to different games and watching visiting different teams. Is that the idea?
Yeah, but we are 4 of us going to every Bayern game, so we know each other, and then we're going to other football matches also. Yeah.
And your first visit to the Isle of Man?
Today.
Yeah. And what do you make of it so far?
Great people, and yeah, we're just looking around and find some pubs after the game. Yeah.
Isn't that brilliant? Would you wonder what pub they went to? But that was Chris Pearson catching up with some German visitors at that Ravens game at the weekend. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be for the Ravens. They lost 2-0 to Glossop. Their next match is coming up on Saturday. It's away against Bury, kicking off at 3 p.m. So everything crossed for them. But you can hear the atmosphere, can't you, in the background there with Chris talking to everyone. If you haven't been to a Ravens game, it's well worth doing it. There is a really great atmosphere. Thank you so much for your company tonight. That is all from Update this evening. Coming up next, it is Agenda with Phil Gaughan. Chris Kinley's here from 6 with Greatest Hits. At 9, it's Ian Cottier with Time for Brass. And Dave Moore will round off your Monday with After Hours from 10 p.m. Remember, you can always go to manxradio.com for the very latest on all tonight's top stories. You can also listen to the newscasts as well. That's the fuller interviews that don't get a chance to be played on air. You can listen to all of those, and this programme will also be available very shortly to download as a podcast, and we will be back with you live from 5 tomorrow. Whatever you're doing this evening, have a good one.